What's going on, everybody? Nick Whalen, Alex Barutha here with you. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball Podcast, Monday, November 4th. Alex, big waiver wire period over the weekend, especially for me, where I've just been decimated by injuries in the RotoWire Stake League, almost to a comical degree. Had some really sad bids in the hopper last night that we'll get to. We'll talk about all the players that we were looking to add, looking to drop. And part of the reason for that is, we started to get kind of our first wave of really major injuries early in the season. Obviously we had Steph Curry go out early in the year, but we get the Paolo Banchero news. Lauri Markkanen has been missing time. The Pelicans' entire roster feels like it's injured right now. Which of those injuries has most impacted you so far?
I will say I have a league where I have Banchero, Scotty Barnes, Kyle Kuzma, Chris Middleton, and Joel Embiid.
Good.
Not doing that well in that league.
Really?
Yeah, ninth out of I think 12 or 10. I don't even know. It's bad. Ninth out of 10th. I think obviously the Banchero one is the biggest one, and now Wendell Carter is hurt for them as well. I don't know what his timeline is. Yeah, he is always hurt. That's the thing. So Anthony Black and Mo Wagner were really big waiver wire moves. They got blown out by Dallas yesterday. So the minutes are going to be kind of up and down, but obviously the Raptors, Scotty Barnes is out for a while with the broken orbital bone, but it's like, when are we going to get news on Immanuel Quickley? Because he's just been doubtful. They keep doubtfuling him. And we've just seen a lot of Davion Mitchell, Jamal Shed. And it's one of those situations where it's like, you kind of want to add those guys, but you worry that the second you add them, Quickley's back. And then those guys you drop them and you don't get anything good.
Yeah, I tried to get Davion Mitchell and was unsuccessful. That was kind of the depths of my waiver wire woes this weekend. And yeah, I had that same calculation where it's like, you got enough budget at this point in the year where if you really want to jack it up, you can get just about anybody, but it's like, do I want to blow 25% of my fab budget on a half a week of Davion Mitchell or Jamal Shed? Probably not. But yeah, the Quickley thing has been dragging along. They have not been kind to us as far as giving, a timetable, right? And he's missed 6 games in a row. They're already saying that Quickley is closer to doubtful for tonight's game in Denver. It is a 4-game week for Toronto. So if you want to roll the dice, maybe he comes back Wednesday in Sacramento. They are on a road trip right now too. The next home game for the Toronto Raptors is next Friday, which doesn't always mean anything, but sometimes they'll have a player kind of hang back or target a home game just to kind of get the ramp up process going. So I don't know how much time Quickley is going to miss. Gradey Dick has played really well. RJ Barrett, the counting stats have been fantastic in his absence, and Toronto is just kind of a skeleton crew right now. Some of the starting lineups that we're seeing from this team, which did get a win in overtime the other night against Sacramento, but they started Pirtle, Mitchell, Barrett, Ochai Agbaji, who looked really good in that game, by the way. 22, 5, 2 steals and a block for him, 9 of 12 from the field. And then Gradey Dick, again, who we mentioned, started to see Gradey Dick, go with the last pick in a lot of drafts, some speculative ads there. I mean, it feels like he's already shown up to a degree that we never would have expected, and showed some flashes even before Scotty Barnes went down. But I think the absence of Quickley has really freed up, not only a lot of playing time, but a lot of shots for Gradey Dick, who has 25, 15, 30, 31, and 22 points respectively over his last 5 games.
He's been great. The only problem is all he's getting you is points. It's 21 points a game, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. He's getting you threes, obviously, 2.7. Yeah. And if you took him in the last pick of your draft, you're doing great. If you picked him up in waivers, you're doing great. My concern is when Quickley and Barnes comes back, does that 21 points a game go to 16 points a game? And then he's also giving you no rebounds and assists, and then he's a drop. So I would say, I think you either hang on while he's cooking or you try to sell high potentially.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think I'd hang on to it probably through the week because it is a 4-game week for Toronto. I think, best case scenario is Quickley probably plays 2 of those games. So I think I would ride this out for another week. I think the usage should sustain for him. Not the greatest string of matchups here. They're going on a West Coast trip. So Denver, Sacramento, the Clippers, and the Lakers are the next 4 for Toronto. But there's also not going to be a ton of great schedule spots for that team because they are the good schedule spots for the other teams. Let's talk about Philly real quickly. Joel Embiid still out indefinitely. Obviously, a weird situation over the weekend where it was initially reported that he punched a reporter. Then it was like, no, it was more of a shove. Either way, some sort of altercation there. The NBA is investigating said altercation. I have no idea what will come of that. What we do know is that Embiid is still out tonight against the Suns. Just so much murkiness surrounding this situation. But the Sixers should get Paul George making his debut tonight.
I Paul George, unfortunately, on a couple teams because he slipped so far in some of my drafts. But I'm hoping he just come back tonight. Maybe his minutes are limited, and then you just got to hope he's relatively healthy from here on out. But you mentioned it with no Embiid. Obviously, that situation's its own thing.
Yeah.
But they're so desperate for scoring and just playmaking in general that I think while Paul George is in and Embiid is out, Paul George could have some monster games.
They're going to need him to. I think that's kind of part of the deal right now for Philly, as long as Embiid isn't out there. And, part of the reason that I think we were fairly conservative in our Paul George projections is because obviously you're assuming Embiid will be out there for 2/3 of those games. But the more time Embiid misses, the more upside there is for Paul George. I mean, it's kind of a two-man team, with him and Tyrese Maxey. And I do think as far as George's workload is concerned, I think the schedule lines up pretty well. No back-to-backs this week for Philly. They do have 4 games. They do play a back-to-back next Tuesday and Wednesday, the 12th and the 13th. But after that, there's not another back-to-back until early December. So if you're kind of trying to map out, all right, could Paul George be limited? Could there be some missed games in there? I think the schedule works in his favor.
Yeah. And again, you really just got to hope he stays healthy. And they need him. I don't think you can. You just got to enjoy it if you have him on your roster. I don't think there's really like a buy or a sell opportunity. It's just like, congrats, Paul George is back,
Yeah, thanks to everybody throwing questions in the chat, by the way. We will get to as many of those as we can later in the show. Want to hit a couple high-level topics, and then we'll dig in on your questions. In terms of the waiver wire, Alex, the league where I'm just getting crushed with injuries is a 16-team league. So it's not necessarily, reminiscent of what, a lot of the listeners would be playing in. We're talking like I'm bidding on Tristan Da Silva. I got Cason Wallace this week. I got Mo Wagner. Garrison Matthews will be in my starting lineup in this league. I'm not proud of any of this. But if you're in any of your shallower leagues, who are some of the names that you saw coming and going?
Shallower leagues. I think Peyton Pritchard was someone I had suggested on Friday as an ad. His shooting's a bit unsustainable right now, but they're like actually playing him. So if you need the threes, like he's an ad. I think Royce O'Neal is kind of going under rostered. He's just been really solid. Maybe that is a little bit more of a deep league thing. The last name I'll mention here before if you have anybody you want to mention, Alex Sarr, another guy who I mentioned on Friday, is rostered in 39% of Yahoo league. So he's going to be available in a lot of people's formats. And he's averaging 3.3 blocks per game right now. I know his shooting's not great. It almost doesn't matter. Like if you can take the field goal percentage hit and just hope that he gets a little better as the season goes along, like his defense and his rebounding right now in 26 minutes a game is enough where I absolutely believe he should be rostered.
Yeah, that's a really good call to bring up Alex Sarr, who, it doesn't feel like he's off to this crazy start by any means, just because, you're always looking for scoring first when it comes to rookies, at least in real life. And he's averaging, under 10 points per game, but he's been the 80th ranked player per game in 8 category leagues simply because of those defensive numbers. Like you said, back-to-back games with 4 blocks. He had 2 blocks in each of his first 3 games of the year. He's given you a few steals. The efficiency is already looking a lot better than it was the first few games of the year. He just went 7 of 11 from the field against Miami the other night. Kind of seems to be locked into 23 to 27 minutes most nights, whether they're playing the Hawks, whether they're getting blown out by Miami or Cleveland. Like that's been pretty standard regardless of the situation.
He has been one of the best shot blockers in the NBA, and he's averaging 1.2 fantasy points per minute. So if he can start getting up to 30 minutes, which who knows, but like later in the season, like you are going to have to roster him. I mean, someone asked in the chat, is Alex Sarr a hold? Like, absolutely. He should be picked up. I think he's underrated right now. Like, again, the only thing he's really killing you in is the field goal percentage, but he's only taking about 10 shots a game. I mean, he's not destroying you. And the reality is like, he's just been so good on defense.
Yeah, we're also dealing with such a small sample, right? Like first 4 games of the year, you're like, oh my God, he's shooting 29% from the field. Then he goes 7 of 11 in the last game, and that jumped his field goal percentage 8 percentage points just on that one game.
Right.
So like, I'm not saying he's going to shoot 62%. It's not going to be good, but chances are it's not going to be extremely damaging. And the more time that Kyle Kuzma misses in Washington too, the better that is for Alex Sarr. Kuzma going to miss at least some time to begin this week. What are we doing with the Pelicans overall? It's like, this is just a waiver wire team at this point. And Zion Williamson, by the way, was just added to the injury report ahead of tonight's game. He is now questionable against the Blazers, but Trey Murphy obviously is out. DeJounte Murray's out long-term. Herb Jones is out. CJ McCollum is going to miss at least a couple of weeks. Jordan Hawkins has been a hot commodity. Obviously Brandon Ingram's rostered everywhere. I'm still fairly high on what I've seen out of Yves Missi. It slowed down a little bit, but had a bunch of multi-block games to begin the season. He started and played 26 minutes each of the last 2 games.
Missi, I have him in one league where it's just like the schedule worked out for me to keep him on the roster. They played on some low volume days. Yeah. It's like a daily moves league. To me, the sort of waiver wire prize on this team right now is Jose Alvarado. Like, if you really need the points, like Hawkins is your better bet, but Alvarado is giving you the all-around stats. Like, maybe he's only going to score, like, he only scored 9 points against Atlanta last night, but he has got 7 assists in back-to-back games. He's got a steal in every single game this season. He has some high rebounding games. Yeah. I think Alvarado has to be rostered probably even in 10-team category leagues. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I mentioned Jordan Hawkins. As long as Murray and McCollum are out, he's going to continue to benefit. He started each of the last 3 games. He's played huge minutes in all 3 of those as well. And he's taken 33 pointers in that span, not even shooting it that well. He's still giving you 3 a game, but he's only hit 10 out of 30. So certainly somebody to keep an eye on there. Saw a lot of flashes from Jordan Hawkins as a rookie last season, and looks like he's ready to take on a larger role. Let's hit a couple of the questions here. Here's a good one from Admiral Nita. He says, are Bilal Coulibaly and Dyson Daniels sell highs or holds in a 12-team 8-cat league?
Coulibaly, that's a tough question. Coulibaly shooting 61% from the field and 48% from 3 on like decent volume. He's not going to continue doing that. So like right now he's averaging 19 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. When he starts shooting normally, it's going to be closer down to like 15, 16 points. Kuzma comes back. I would consider Coulibaly a sell high if I had to, but you could also just hold. I mean, it's not like an immediate you must have to. And then Daniels, I don't think you sell high on Daniels just because maybe he is shooting a little higher than expected, but his steals production is going to be ridiculous all season. Like the 2.4 steals per game is real. Because that's what he's done his whole career. Yeah. So I would consider both of these guys a hold, but if I had to pick one of them to try to sell high on, it probably would be Coulibaly.
I think so too. And I think you could actually get some decent for Coulibaly. That's part of the debate. I mean, he's strung together 4 really nice games in a row. The minutes have been there. I don't necessarily see a gigantic cliff coming for him, but like you said, the percentages are just way, way above what you would expect. And at some point, those are going to come back down. And part of the reason I would hold Daniels over Coulibaly, if let's just say it's a binary, you got to drop one, got to hold one. Bogdanovic is going to miss another month. And I think that just creates a pretty nice runway here where Dyson Daniels is going to be locked into big minutes, whether you like it or not. And DeAndre Hunter, he's also out. He's always injured, never somebody you can depend on. So I think if you are going to sell high on Dyson Daniels, I would try to do it like a week before Bogdanovic comes back as opposed to now.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like you said, I mean, they're Daniels wasn't doing a lot offensively in terms of scoring or playmaking before all of this. But now the fact that Hunter's out, we know Bogdanovic is out for an extended period. They're just like dealing with tongue injuries. Maybe he can do a little more on offense.
Our pal Paul says, should I drop Wendell Carter and gamble on Robert Williams? Robert Williams, we may see him back in action this week. He's currently questionable for tonight's game. Rob Williams has not played in an NBA game in almost exactly a calendar year. November 5th of last year was his last appearance.
To me, this question is like more about Wendell Carter actually, and whether or not like he's playing well enough to hang on to. And I think that's borderline. Before he got hurt, he was averaging about like 9 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists. Yeah. That's like fine to hold on to. It's also fine to drop if you think there's someone out there with upside. Now, I don't know how much upside Rob Williams has because he's injury prone. He's more injury prone than Wendell Carter Jr. is. And I don't really know what they're going to do with the minute split between him and Donovan Clingan. I think there's a chance like Rob Williams plays like 12 minutes a game, and maybe he can get a block and a half in those 12 minutes. 100% possible because he's that talented as a shot blocker. But I would maybe wait to get a definitive news update on Carter in terms of like, is this guy out for a week or is he out for a month before I start making moves to drop him for high risk guys like Rob Williams.
Yeah, maybe I'm just a pessimist and I'm not willing to take chances, but I just like, how much upside is there really with Rob Williams? You know, I think it's almost more likely that he plays twice this week and then he's dealing with knee soreness and it's back to just day to day. It's like, how, if you're in a daily lineups league, I get it, especially if it's a deeper league. How often are you going to be confident locking Rob Williams into a weekly lineup? You know, like they have Donovan Clingan there now too. It's like, do you just totally push Donovan Clingan out of the rotation for a team that's clearly rebuilding? That doesn't really make sense. I don't know. I don't think there's quite enough upside here. And, it's not like I love Wendell Carter. I wouldn't drop anyone that I perceive as being more consistent or somebody that I would at some point put in a starting lineup over Rob Williams. Cause I don't think the upside is that great here, even in like a best case health scenario.
I agree. I don't think you can do it in a weekly league. Your point about daily leagues is completely correct. Like that's more so where it might make sense.
All right, we got a question about Alperen Sengun. Are you guys worried about Sengun? I know you have a lot of Sengun, Alex. I have him in a couple spots as well. I mean, comes out on opening night, 25 points, 18 boards, 5 assists, 4 steals, a block. You're like, oh my goodness, he's got 2 threes in there as well. And the points and rebounds have been okay ever since, but that was clearly the high watermark on his season so far. Last 5 games, 13 points, 11 boards, 3.5 assists, about 1.5 combined steals and blocks. He's not really giving you anything from 3. The field goal percentage has been really bad of late. He's really struggling from the field. He's about 70% at the line. How concerned are you about Alperen Sengun?
I would say like mild concern, like enough to where bringing this up is like a real thing. You mentioned it. He played pretty well the first 2 games of the year and then struggled against Wembanyama, played 22 minutes and then didn't have another great game again. And then the other night against Golden State, he basically sits out a huge portion of the game because they're just playing better without him. He couldn't keep up with the speed, and obviously he's not a great defender. And they'll just like, Ime Udoka is just like, okay, man, like I'll put in Steven Adams at center. I'll put in Jabari Smith. We'll play more Tari Eason. Like we'll fly up and down the court, play defense. So I am a little concerned. I also think, I wouldn't sell. I wouldn't sell. If anything, if you're asking, is this like a sell or a buy? To me, this is a buy because I don't think this can really get any worse. The question is who that invested in Sengun in the 3rd round is going to sell to you? Because I wouldn't. But I'm a little concerned, because their roster's so deep.
Good question from Alan here. He said he's in a 14-team, 9-category league. Said I dropped Caruso for Dyson Daniels. Thoughts? I'm fine with this.
100%.
I would rather have Daniels. Yeah.
100%. To me, that question is more like, should I drop Caruso? Like generally people might be listening to this who are like, I have Caruso on my roster. What do I do?
Yeah.
I think he's droppable. He's just not playing. Like if you're desperate for the steals and the blocks, he's still giving you enough. But if you need other stuff, you can drop him.
Okay, we'll keep this question simple. It's essentially about Anthony Edwards and Trae Young. Our question asker says he traded Ant for Trae Young. I'm just going to put it to you. Who would you rather have? Let's say it's an 8-category league. Who do you want rest of season?
Trae. I want the assists and that usage, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Ant's taking a ton of threes, which I don't know if that's good for the Timberwolves in real life. It's, I guess, a little bit better than just pure points for his fantasy profile. But at the same time, I don't love how this Minnesota offense is operating. Ant's also struggling at the free throw line so far. That'll come around, but that's been a big part of him ranking a bit lower. Ant's a better real life player. I think Trae is a better fantasy player. I think we both would have said the same coming into the year, right?
Trae in 8-cat right now is ranked 4th per game.
He's been so good.
4th, and Edwards is 31st. And like you said, like the free throw percentage is going to increase for Edwards, and he could finish 12th. That wouldn't shock me, but it's like at this point, I would rather have the steadier, consistent production of Trae Young, especially because those assists are not easy to find.
Getting a lot of Fred VanVleet questions. George says, how concerned are we for Fred VanVleet? Callum says, thoughts on Fred VanVleet and Tobias Harris. Do you think they'll pick it up? What's the opportunity with them? We'll start on the VanVleet side. I have VanVleet in an important league, as you know, Alex. I'm not panicking. He goes through these stretches. You know, we've seen it before. There's a reason that he shoots like 39% from the field every year, because he will have a week where he goes 4 for 25 over the course of 2 games like he has. But before that, I mean, he's basically been the same guy, right? He was at like 15 points, 7 assists, you know, a couple steals per game. He just ran into 2 really bad shooting nights, is how I would look at it. 1 of 15 from 3 over the last 2 games. Sometimes that just happens. You know, I'd be a lot more concerned if he was only taking like 7 shots per game. And I do think, you know, Jalen Green getting off to this hot start, you know, I think that's been a little bit part of it. Sengun has just kind of struggled. The offense has been disjointed. You know, if you can offload VanVleet for a comparable player, I guess I would do it. It's just really tough to do that. Like, you'd be selling at his lowest point so far this season. Somebody in the chat mentioned like dropping VanVleet. I mean, unless you're in like a 6-team league, I probably wouldn't be doing that. I think we'll look back, hopefully, fingers crossed, and this will be the worst 2-game stretch of his career. But I'm not panicking.
No one is a 28% field goal shooter. VanVleet, I think he's just cold shooting. He's still playing the minutes. He's playing 38 minutes a game. Yeah. He has 4 total turnovers in his 6 games right now. Yeah. He's still been great. I'm not worried about VanVleet. He's a buy low, in my opinion. And then Tobias Harris as well. It's kind of the same situation. Tobias Harris is shooting 19% from 3. That's going to increase. I will say, on the positive note, like, he's been doing a lot of other stuff. He's been rebounding the ball well, season high 6 assists the other night. His defense has been pretty good. Maybe that comes down, maybe it doesn't. But neither of these guys to me are sells.
All right, Alex. We're going to do a message from DraftKings Pick 6 in a moment. But before this, I want to get your live take to a trade that I'm trying to finagle in one of my leagues. So I'm trying to offload Lauri Markkanen. I'm making that very clear. If you listen to us in the preseason, if you watched our videos over the summer, I was like, I'm not drafting Lauri Markkanen. And then I did. I got him in this auction. He was too cheap. I'm like, all right, I'll just bid him up a little bit. And then, you're watching the clock go down. It's like, oh my goodness, now Lauri Markkanen's on my team. Here we are, 2.5 weeks in. I'm now trying to sell him. One option I have is I could trade him straight up for Rudy Gobert, Markkanen for Gobert. The other option is I send Markkanen and Buddy Hield, and I receive Gobert, Terry Rozier, and Jaden McDaniels.
So I like both of those deals. Gobert has not been playing especially well up to his standards, but he's still giving you, 10-10 and a block. Maybe those blocks increase. It's early. And you mentioned it with Markkanen. They're going to be in no rush to bring him back, and it's not even March yet. They're horrible. Like, they're worse than we thought they would be. The Jazz.
They are very, very, very bad.
And I know this is a 16-team league, and so you're having competent rotational players is huge. Guys who would like. So if you're giving up Buddy Hield and getting 2 guys back, one of those guys being Terry Rozier, who's like a legitimate part of the offense, plays 30 minutes a night, 100% secure role. I think I would do that. Jacob McDaniels as a fantasy player is kind of nothing, but is at least someone like in a pinch on a 4-game week you could throw in there, and it's not gonna ruin your life.
Yeah. So George, who is in the comments here, he said he's in a similar situation trying to offload Markkanen. I'm sorry, George. I should not have led you astray on this. He said, I don't like Gobert. He'll destroy free throw percentage, at least not for my punt field goal percentage team. I get that. I have Giannis in this league, and I also have Scotty Barnes. So I'm going to be struggling in free throw percentage anyway. So I think, even in a small sample, we've already seen enough that it's like, I'm not crawling out of the basement. Best case scenario is I finish like 13th or 14th in free throw percentage. So that's part of the reason that Gobert, becomes more of an attractive option there. So I think I'm going to pull the trigger on the one that involves Hield and Rozier. As much as I love Buddy Hield and as much as he's like carried my team so far, it does feel like is this going to be the best week and a half that Buddy Hield has all year? I love having him on my team because it's just, you're guaranteed like 3-4 threes a night. But at the same time, he's had some of these like 6-7 3-pointer games without Steph.
Yeah, and Rozier's been really underrated. Been a really consistent source of points, rebounds, assists, maybe the steals increase. Like I said, he's playing real he's a real part of the Miami offense. So hard to turn that down.
All right. I think during this read, I may pull the trigger on that trade. So we got a message from our friends at DraftKings Pick 6. Please sit tight for a moment and check it out. Here at RotoWire, we're proud to be partnered up with DraftKings Pick 6 this NBA season. Think your team will score more than 100 points tonight? How about your favorite point guard making more than 4 3-pointers? Check out DraftKings Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy basketball and win cash with DraftKings. Here's how it works. All you got to do is pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. So for hoops, we're talking points, assists, rebounds, etc. Lock in those picks, compete against opponents for your shot at huge cash prizes. Go download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app right now and use our code ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. That's code ROTOPICK for new Pick 6 customers. Play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. All right. Thank you to our friends over at DraftKings Pick 6. Go check it out, especially if you're in a state that does not have legal sports betting. You can go access DraftKings Pick 6, throw together some really fun picks for the NBA every night, especially on a night like tonight, Alex, where we have, I believe, every team in action. No games on Tuesday due to the election, so all 30 teams in action tonight. You can catch Alex and I, by the way, on SiriusXM NBA Radio. We'll have a special extended show tonight. They're giving us 45 minutes to preview all of these games, so check that out over on NBA Radio channel 86. All right, we got a question here from Yo Mero. He says, what would you do with Jrue Holiday? Drop?
Yeah, I wish Jrue was playing better. He is like they're very comfortable. Joe Mazzulla is very comfortable letting Jrue Holiday take a little more time on the bench and giving those minutes to Peyton Pritchard. To me, Holiday is still worth rostering. His steals production has fallen off a cliff. I think that might be sort of anomalous. Like he really isn't giving you that much. I agree, but he's just a good roto player. In a head-to-head, in a points league, I think you can drop him because he's averaging like 20, 21 fantasy points a game, and like you can find that off the waiver wire and stream that in. That's fine. But in a roto setting, I would keep him. So that's the major difference for me.
The Blade says, what would you do with Haliburton? Just what would you do? I would just hold him.
Yeah, the shooting's a bit bizarre. And I think, something I didn't mention with VanVleet, part of the reason I'm not worried about VanVleet shooting at all is because his free throw percentage has been like the same. Haliburton's free throw percentage is down about 10 percentage points, in addition to his field goal percentage and 3-point percentage being low. But he, after scoring 15 total points in the first 2 games, he is giving you 17 points a game now on sketchy shooting still. But when that improves, and assuming it improves, that'll be fine. And he's still giving you ridiculous assist numbers, over 30 assists the past 3 games. If anything, I would buy low if someone else. So if you have Haliburton right now, I would just hang on. I would just hang on and ride it out. Hopefully it's just a bad 2 weeks.
Alex, I have a question for you. Would you drop Andre Drummond for any of the following? Santi Aldama, Ochai Agbaji, or Jordan Hawkins in a weekly lineups league?
I think that is entirely dependent on the stats that you need. That's a back out answer. Yeah. So depending on what stats, like if you need the rebounds, keep Drummond. If you need some like threes and assists upside, you got Aldama, Agbaji, and Hawkins. If this is a points league, it gets a little more convoluted, and I would just take whoever. Most teams play 4 games, so if any of those guys have 3 games, I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry. try to find one of those guys with 4 games, and I would throw him in there.
All right, I think that's fair. Sam says Miles Turner was just dropped in my 10-team head-to-head points league. Just picked up Sarr. Do I drop Sarr for Turner or hold him? So points league becomes a little complicated.
I would drop Sarr for Turner. It's actually closer than you would think in the points league, but I would Turner is just safer. Yeah. More consistent, even though he is injury prone, but it's close to the points league, I guess.
One more VanVleet question, by the way. I think this is actually an interesting one. Let's say you could make this trade. Would you trade Fred VanVleet for Cam Thomas, or would you trade Cam Thomas for Fred VanVleet? 9 cap.
So I think I just value assists too much to want to get rid of VanVleet for Cam Thomas. But so this question to me is entirely dependent on which of those stats you need. Like if you're top 3 in assists, I would, like, if you have VanVleet and you're top 3 in assists and you're down in points, like maybe you make that trade. Mm-hmm. Whatever stats you want or need, assists or points, that's Cam Thomas or VanVleet.
I think I would rather have Cam Thomas. I just want to roll the dice and see where the season goes. Like it's just been, it's so fun to watch, man. Like the Nets are actually pretty competitive too. Like
I know.
We were talking about Utah earlier. It's hard to overstate how terrible Utah has been. They have a 98.2 offensive rating. That is 8 points per 100 worse than anyone else. 8 points per 100. The difference between the Blazers at 29 and Utah at 30 is like the same difference between the Celtics and the Nets right now. That's like 1 to 12. The Nets have the 12th best offense in the NBA.
Yeah, it's a little early for this, but Basketball Reference has their simple rating, which is essentially net rating combined with strength of schedule. The Nets are 21st. They're in the same category as like the Bulls, the Pistons, the Grizzlies, the Blazers. The Jazz are 10 points worse in simple rating. The worst team in the NBA, Philadelphia 76ers, -16. Best team, Thunder, +17 for what it's worth.
Yeah, that checks out. OKC has just been a buzzsaw so far this season. All right, Crypto Millie says Keyonte George or Dyson Daniels in a points league. Points league makes this a little dicier. No pun intended. In a roto league, I'd prefer Daniels.
Well, for the raw numbers, Daniels is at 31 fantasy points per game right now, and Keyonte George is at 25. So I think this question ultimately is asking, do you think Keyonte George can add 5 fantasy points, or will Dyson Daniels lose 5 fantasy points, or some combination of? I think Keyonte George can possibly gain 5 fantasy points. I mean, he's shooting 30% from the field, but I think I would rather actually have Daniels, but it's close. Like if you were asking me, would you trade one for the other? I don't know if you have to do that, but I'd prefer Daniels.
Mm-hmm. Couple fun trade questions here. This one comes from Ryan. He says Porzingis and Schroder or Jaren Jackson in a 12-team points league. So basically, would you trade Triple J for Porzingis and Schroder?
That is interesting. I think I would. Maybe because I mean, if Schroder gets traded, in theory, that's the same time that around when Porzingis is going to be back.
Yeah,
trying to project Porzingis is when he's going to play, when he's not, is going to be a problem. Maybe it's like in a weekly league, I would rather have the stability of Jackson. In a daily moves league, you can maybe take the 2-for-1 chance and get Kristaps and Schroder.
Mm-hmm. That's so tough. Like I love Schroder so much. He's like the guy that I wish I had on more teams so far this year. You do wonder at some point, do the Nets start to fall back? Are they just kind of off to a hotter start and, they go through like a stretch where they go 1-12? I think that's totally possible. And I know you brought it up. I can't remember if it was on XM last week or it was on this show where like Dennis Schroeder is going to be an attractive trade candidate, right? I think they're going to see the numbers he's putting up. It's not going to be, in my opinion, that great of a deadline market, and anywhere he goes but Brooklyn is going to be a huge fantasy downgrade.
Yeah, he is shooting really hot. 52% from 3, 51% from the field. That's not going to sustain. So he's averaging 20 points, 7 assists right now. That probably ends up stabilizing to like 16 and 7. Still someone you have to roster, but Just know that.
James says, I traded Scoot and Andrew Wiggins for Devin Vassell in a 14-team Roto League. What do we think about this deal?
I think I like that. Wiggins has been fine so far. Has only played 4 games though, so it's sort of tough to evaluate. And Scoot coming off the bench, and his minutes have not been super consistent, especially lately. He's losing minutes, and I think I'm just off Scoot, man, for this year at least.
Yeah.
I understand in a dynasty keeper format why you might want to hang on. I think he just would have shown us more already. So I think at Vassell, once he's back, I don't know if this is a breakout year for him, but he's still going to be the second option on San Antonio and was great last year. So I think I'd have Vassell.
Yeah, I would take that chance. Part of it, I think, depends on like how your team is doing. Either way, I would want Vassell. It's like if I'm struggling early on, it's like, all right, I need to do something here. And Devin Vassell is clearly the best player in this trade. Or if you are doing well, then you're selling high on Wiggins, even though it's only been 4 games. This has been like a best case start for him, because who knows, coming into this year, it's like Wiggins has not played well for like a year and a half. It's like, I think you've already banked a much better start than you would have expected. And like you said, Scoot hasn't started a game yet. In points leagues, you could survive with some of the counting stats, but even it's not like he's giving you 8 or 9 assists per game. He has 4 total steals, 0 blocks so far. The 3-point shooting remains a complete disaster, 29% from 3. It's, we're 2.5 weeks into the season and he's already losing minutes and, barely playing meaningful minutes in blowouts. Like it's not looking good. I mean, the Blazers, I love Chauncey Billups as a player. I don't think this is a very well coached team. It's a team that is pretty guard heavy. They'll get Shaedon Sharpe back at some point. Like it's not, things are not trending well for Scoot. So yeah, maybe you're selling low on Scoot. You're selling high on Wiggins. I would take the Vassell side of this.
Well, you mentioned it with Scoot. The thing that is annoying about the blowouts, Anthony Simons is playing 35 minutes a game in these blowouts.
I know.
And Scoot's playing like 20. It's like, what?
I know.
So
I don't get it.
It's bad.
You would think with where the Blazers are, you just make a point to get Scoot on the court. Right? I mean, it's like the Colts with Anthony Richardson. A little bit different because the stakes are a bit higher and the Colts are more competitive. But it's like this guy is kind of your future for better or for worse, and you got to at least give yourself a chance to evaluate him.
It's like if you're down 18 going into the fourth, why not just let Scoot and Klingon play the entire fourth quarter? Like any other rebuilding franchise would be doing that.
Not the Blazers, baby. Not the Blazers. Okay, we'll hit a couple more and then we'll be out of here. Christian says, do I trade Jokic for Curry and Bam in a points league?
I mean, I think you might.
In a points league, yeah.
If you have enough, I mean, if you have enough starting spots, this makes total sense. In deeper leagues, this makes more sense than in shallower leagues. And that's generally my advice on like 2-for-1 trades, is assuming you feel like they're pretty equal, where you're thinking like, I kind of want to do this. If you're in a shallow league, you having the one player, I think, is generally better because you can stream in. There's a lot of talent off the waiver wire you can stream in on 4-game weeks. But in a deeper league, 14, 16, that's harder to find. And at some point, you just, I think, want the higher floor of having more players.
We're getting in the mud on this one. Christian Braun or Trae Mann in a points league?
Braun had the hot start. I haven't checked in on his stats the past couple games. Still doing it. Still playing well.
Yeah.
I think, Braun's going to have the more consistent role because, I mean, he's playing 35 minutes a game. The Hornets have had some injuries, especially to Brandon Miller. That's given Trae Mann a little bit more opportunity.
Yeah.
It's close, but I think Braun.
I think in a points league, I would go Braun. I think there's going to be a pretty significantly higher floor going forward because, like you said, we haven't really seen the Hornets in full form yet, right? It's like Brandon Miller played 11 minutes in the opener. He played limited minutes last time out. We already saw minutes reduced for Trae Mann with Brandon Miller back the other night against Boston too. And I mean, keep in mind, I think if it's a Roto league, this is way more of a debate for me because of the 3-pointers upside for Trae Mann. But if you're kind of taking that out of the mix in some ways, if you're just looking for counting stats more than anything. I would trust the, like you said, 35 to sometimes 38, 39 minutes for Christian Braun. Like, that's not going anywhere unless they bring somebody in, which I don't really see happening. I don't know how that deal comes to fruition. Like, Christian Braun is just going to be out there a ton. And I think just being out there with Jokic, being a part of what should still be a very competitive team, I would rather take the chance on that than a Charlotte Hornets backup guard.
I think that makes sense.
All right, try to find a couple more good ones here. Let's see. Somebody's asking if they should pick up Scoot. We just talked about him. It depends. All right, Tommy Pickles of the Rugrats says, got offered Cade and Bam for Haliburton and Herder in a 12-team head-to-head category league.
Herder's a nobody. Sorry. I hate to be a hater, but Herder in a category league is just like super replaceable. To me, the complete definition of like a replacement level fantasy player. I don't trust Mike Brown as a coach. Like, Kevin Herder was also terrible last year. Could end up playing like 20 minutes a game in the future. They got Keon Ellis. Malik Monk should probably be playing more. I'm so out on Herder, even if he is playing well and shooting hot. I just don't think it's going to last. So I would happily take Cade and Bam, even though, like, again, you are selling low on Haliburton, but Cade and Bam combined is a ridiculous amount of counting stats, and they're just awesome.
Yeah. I do think Haliburton finds this level, by the way. I think this has just been a really weird start for him. But yeah, I think if you can get even with the slow start for Haliburton, like that's still a pretty reasonable deal. So yeah, I'm with you. I wouldn't worry about the Herder part of this at all. How do you feel about having Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley on my 10-cat weekly team? Would I try to move on for one for more balance in another category? I don't know, man. It depends on the rest of your roster, obviously, but both these guys have been awesome. I would love to have both these players.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. And they're not. Yeah, some of it's like, are you in roto versus are you in head to head, and are you trying to specialize, or are you trying to punt certain categories? Yeah. But just broadly speaking, I don't think this is a problem having both of them. Like, it might be tough on the, like, I don't know. You got the whole front court, right? In theory, it's like if one has a big game on the boards, the other one doesn't, but you're still scooping up all the rebounds. Yeah, and it's not quite a handcuff. But if Allen gets hurt, it's more for Mobley at center. He'll probably get more rebounds, more blocks. So that's fine. No problem with that at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I've run into this issue in my fantasy football leagues where it's like, oh, you don't necessarily want Saquon and Jalen Hurts because Hurts is going to get all the touchdowns. You're like, well, they're on the same team, dude. Like, it's all going to the same place. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that as far as like those guys, trimming into each other's usage per se. I mean, neither of them are high usage players overall. You're going to get blocks. You're going to get rebounds. You're going to get field goal percentage. I love what I've seen from Mobley so far this year. I would not want to get off of him. All right, we'll hit a couple more. Trace Jackson Davis or Yves Missy?
I have Jackson Davis on. It's either one or two fantasy teams, and it's just like he's doing just enough in a daily moves league where I don't feel like I have to drop him, but it has been pretty discouraging.
Yeah.
Because I think we were looking towards some of these guys to have a breakout on Golden State. And the fact that TJD can't consistently see 20 minutes is a problem. And we talked about Misi. If you want the shot blocking upside, you take Misi. I think it comes down to, like, do you want block shots? Yes, take Misi. Do you want a little bit of everything? If you want some assists upside, I think you take TJD.
I would go Misi. I just think there's more defensive upside there. Scoring, rebounding, probably pretty comparable, maybe slightly in favor of Jackson Davis. But in the category league, I would value the blocks potential more than anything else. All right, two more. Someone offered me Schroder for Gradey Dick. Do I accept?
Yes.
9-cat. Yeah, I want Schroder.
Gradey Dick's only giving you points. Like, Schroder is going to give you other stuff too. He's giving you two category production, and you can find threes off the waiver wire. Like Garrison Matthews, as you picked up in 16 team. Like, that's always available. So I would take the guy who can pass.
All right, last one. House of Sneakerhead has posted this 6 times in the chat, so we rotate to it now 7 times. Just make that 8 times. Terry Rozier or Devin Vassell in a points league?
Oh man, I think probably Rozier is actually safer, because Vassell could end up resting back-to-backs.
Yep.
And they're probably going to take it pretty conservatively with his recovery. And even if you think he can play better, he was only averaging 3 more fantasy points per game last year than Terry Rozier is this year. So to me, I think I would actually rather have Rozier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really close. I think you could definitely argue that there's a little more upside with Vassell, but I think, like you said, guy coming back for injury. I'm still questioning how competitive the Spurs will be long term. They've kind of gotten it together the last couple of games, got off to a really rough start. I still don't think this is going to be a super good team. I would just kind of worry about blowouts and things like that. And the Heat need Rozier, man. They need Terry Rozier to be a lot more consistent than he was last year. And he's always been a sneaky good fantasy player. Like he had like a number of top 50 finishes. He had a top 40 finish in Charlotte. I think we kind of forgot because like he got hurt after the trade last year. It was kind of clunky. Heat were struggling, and it was, I wouldn't say anybody thought it was his fault, but we just kind of forgot about him. But he's been rock solid, man. And prior to last year, he hasn't really missed time.
Yeah, Rozier was someone who I thought got really under discussed this year as someone to draft, like, after pick 100, and it's paying off so far.
All right, guys, we'll cut it off there. We appreciate all the great questions in the chat. We'll be doing this every Monday throughout the NBA season, so you could join us early afternoon. Should be usually around 1:30 Central Time. Make sure you check us out. I'll be back with Brandon Kravitz on Tuesday. We'll have Kirian and Mike Barner on Wednesday, Alex, Shannon, and Ken on Friday talking waiver wire. If you're watching this on YouTube, go check us out in podcast form on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your pods, vice versa. If you're listening to this, go watch it on YouTube. Always a lot of fun. You can see the questions on the screen, follow everything along a little bit more clearly. And if you're still watching along, please make sure you give this video a like, and please make sure you're subscribed to the RotoWire Fantasy Basketball page.